Quick flash before we start. Picture the ramen brand you buy because it feels like the smart, health-conscious choice. Chefs taste it blind and can't finish the bowl. That one's on this list, and it might be the one sitting in your pantry right now. Instant ramen has a health villain, and it's probably not the one you think it is. Most people assume the worst options are the obvious cheap ones, the gas station cups, the dorm staples. But the brand that keeps showing up on health-conscious grocery lists, the one people reach for specifically because it feels like the smarter choice, is quietly one of the worst decisions you can make. Over 100 billion packs of instant ramen are consumed every year. That's roughly 13 packs for every person alive. And the gap between the brands that are genuinely working against you and the two that are actually worth eating is far wider than most people realize, and almost nobody knows which side their go-to falls on. So, here's what this video is. We're going through 7 instant ramen brands you should put back on the shelf, and 2 that are genuinely worth eating. And before you think this is just another lecture about how processed food is bad, it's not. We're going to talk about what's actually in these things, why some of them are worse than others, and what the difference looks like on a label. I've gone deep on the research here, cross-referenced professional chef blind taste tests, nutritionist breakdowns, and the actual ingredient panels. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what to grab and what to walk past. And there's one brand on the avoid list that's going to surprise you, because it's the one people buy specifically because they think it's the healthy choice. We'll get to that. First, a little context, because the story of how instant ramen even exists is genuinely wild, and most people don't know it. It's 1945. Japan just came out of World War II, and the country is facing a serious food shortage. The US military occupation was supplying Japan with wheat flour and actually pushing the Japanese government to use it to make bread. One man named Momofuku Ando couldn't wrap his head around that. He thought, why are we making bread when noodles are already part of our culture? The government basically told him, if you think noodles are a better idea, go figure it out yourself. So he did. Ando spent a full year experimenting in a shed behind his house with basically no noodle making experience. He needed something that tasted good, lasted on a shelf, was cheap, and was easy to prepare. The breakthrough came when he watched his wife making tempura. He realized that flash frying the noodles pulled the moisture out of them, and when you did that, the noodles developed tiny little perforations all over them, which meant they rehydrated incredibly fast in hot water. That was the unlock. In 1958, he released chicken ramen under a company he renamed Nissin, and it sold 13 million packages in its first year. People called it magic ramen because it was ready in minutes. Within a decade, sales in Japan had grown by billions. Then in 1971, Ando did it again, this time at age 61, and introduced cup noodles. They couldn't even keep up with demand, and they were producing 650,000 cups a day. Cup noodle sales eventually overtook packaged noodle sales entirely. By the time Ando finally retired, he was 95 years old. The company he started now reports billions in annual revenue. And today, instant ramen isn't generally thought of as healthy, but some brands are low in sodium while being high in fiber and protein, which means the gap between the worst and best options is much bigger than most people realize. Here's the thing though, what Ando invented in 1958 and what fills the shelves at your grocery store today are not the same thing. The production process scaled, the ingredients got cheaper, and the additives piled up. So let's get into it. One more thing before we start counting down. The brand at the very top of this avoid list isn't a gas station cup or a viral spicy challenge. It's sitting on a health food shelf right now, and by the time we get there, you'll understand exactly why it fooled so many people. Avoid list. Number 2 on the avoid list, and we're starting here because this one is everywhere and most people don't even question it. Nissin Cup Noodles. Chicken flavor. This is one of the most recognized food products in the world. It's in every gas station, every college dorm, every office break room. And here's the problem. When professional chefs blind taste test this one, the feedback is almost always the same. The broth is one-dimensional, The noodles go soggy fast because cup noodles use more starch than wheat flour, which means they're designed to cook faster at lower temperatures, and the trade-off is texture. You lose the chew, you lose the bounce, and what you're left with is soft noodles sitting in thin, salty water. But beyond the taste, the bigger issue is what's in it. Maruchan instant lunch beef comes in at 1,820 milligrams of sodium per serving, and Nissin Top Ramen chicken sits at 1,760 milligrams. The cup noodles line is in the same territory. To put that in perspective, the American Heart Association's recommended daily limit for sodium is 2,300 milligrams total. One cup of these gets you most of the way there before you've eaten anything else that day. And the noodles themselves? Most brands like Nissin use noodles that are fried in oil and then dehydrated, and while that makes them cook fast, it comes at a real cost to your health. The styrofoam cup is also worth mentioning. Styrofoam cup containers contain BPA, a compound that may be carcinogenic and can leach into hot broth. So you're pouring boiling water into a container that's actively releasing chemicals into your food. The paper cup version is better in that specific regard, but the sodium and additive problem doesn't go away just because the packaging changed. Number 6 on the avoid list. Nissin Top Ramen. Any flavor, same company, same core issues, just in a bag instead of a cup. The soy sauce variant hits 1,620 milligrams of sodium, contains TBHQ and maltodextrin, and is consumed by an estimated 20 million Americans weekly. TBHQ is the preservative that keeps the oil in the seasoning packet and the fried noodles from going rancid. It works. But according to the Center for Science in the Public Interest, consumers should avoid it. And a study out of the University of Alberta found that chronic exposure to TBHQ can lead to carcinogenicity. The FDA caps it at 0.02% of total oils in any product, so one pack isn't going to hurt you. But if you're eating this 3 or 4 times a week, that exposure stacks. Beyond the concerning additives, instant ramen is a nutritionally sparse food. The manufacturing process strips the noodles of most beneficial nutrients, leaving behind little more than refined carbohydrates, fats, and high levels of sodium, often described as providing empty calories with minimal protein, fiber, vitamins, or minerals. When chefs taste Top Ramen blind, the verdict is consistent. It tastes like chicken bouillon dissolved in water. There's no complexity, no depth, no real noodle texture to speak of. It's the baseline, and it's the baseline for a reason. Number 5 on the avoid list, Maruchan Ramen, chicken flavor. This one is the most consumed instant ramen in the United States. It's cheap, it's everywhere, and it's been a staple of broke college students and late night cravings for decades. Maruchan's chicken flavor packs 1,820 milligrams of sodium, MSG, hydrolyzed proteins, and palm oil, meaning one pack equals about 79% of your daily sodium limit. The palm oil frying is worth paying attention to. Flash frying noodles reduces their water content instantly, but saturates them in oil. A standard block of fried ramen can contain 14 grams or more of saturated fat. And palm oil frying oxidizes lipids, which promotes artery plaque buildup. The wavy noodle texture in Maruchan is actually a result of how they're processed, steamed, piped into a disc shape, and then deep fried to remove moisture. It creates tiny pores so the noodles rehydrate fast when you pour hot broth over them. The problem is that same process is what loads them with fat and strips out any real nutritional value. Chefs who taste this blind tend to say it has slightly more complexity than Top Ramen. The chicken flavor is a little richer, but structurally, it's the same category of product with the same category of problems. Number 4 on the avoid list, Indomie mee goreng. Now this one is going to upset some people because mee goreng has a massive cult following. And honestly, the flavor is genuinely good. It's got this savory, sweet, slightly funky thing going on that's hard to put down. Professional chefs who taste it blind often enjoy it. But here's the issue. Indomie goreng and samyang buldak variants carry ultra-high sodium loads and have been linked to digestive inflammation in research out of Korea. And the mee goreng specifically is a dry noodle, meaning you boil the noodles, drain them, and mix in the seasoning directly, which means every bit of that flavoring is coating your noodles with no broth to dilute it. The noodle texture is actually one of the better ones in the budget category. It holds its shape, it's got a decent chew, and the sauce clings well, so taste-wise it punches above its weight. But the combination of fried noodles, multiple seasoning packets, and a sodium load that sits well above what most people realize makes this one a brand to treat as an occasional thing, not a regular rotation. Number 3 on the avoid list, Samyang Buldak Fire Noodle. The Buldak series went viral for a reason. The carbonara flavor in particular became one of the most talked about instant ramens on the internet, and the spicy chicken original turned into a global challenge. The noodle texture is genuinely good, thick, wavy, bouncy, and holds its shape even after a good soak. Chefs who taste the carbonara blind tend to like it. The heat is real, the flavor is layered, and the sauce clings to the noodles better than most. But the fire noodle carries 2,280 milligrams of sodium and artificial colors, and was actually banned in Denmark in 2024 over cardiac risk concerns for children. That's a serious number. That's basically an entire day's sodium in one bowl. The spice level also masks how much salt you're actually consuming because your palate is overwhelmed by capsaicin. You're not tasting the salt, but your body is still processing all of it. If you're going to eat buldak, the carbonara is a better choice than the original fire flavor just on the sodium numbers, and eating it occasionally is very different from eating it twice a week. Number 1 on the avoid list, and this is the one I mentioned at the top. This is the one from the cold open. Trader Joe's miso ramen. This is the one people buy because they think they're making the smart choice. The branding is clean, it's at Trader Joe's, it's miso, which sounds healthy, and miso actually is fermented and good for your gut in its natural form. But every professional chef who has tasted this blind has had roughly the same reaction. The flavor is thin, the noodle texture falls apart, and the whole thing tastes like a health food imitation of ramen rather than actual ramen. The noodles are straight, not wavy, and they're lower in alkaline content, which is the thing that gives ramen noodles their signature chew and bounce. Less alkaline means less gluten structure, which means the noodles break apart in your mouth instead of having that satisfying bite. It's also vegan, which is fine, but when you try to make a vegan ramen without the depth that comes from animal fats and long-cooked broths, what you're left with is something that tastes, as one chef put it, healthy in a not good way. Despite Trader Joe's reputation for inventive products, their ramen falls short of expectations. The reason this makes the avoid list isn't because it's the most dangerous, it's actually lower sodium than most of the others. It's here because it's the most misleading. People pay more for it and eat it more frequently because they believe they're making a healthier choice, when the reality is the ingredient quality is low, the texture is poor, and you'd be better served by almost any of the Korean options on the market. Number 7 on the avoid list is a broader category rather than a single brand. Any ramen in a styrofoam cup that you're microwaving. Styrofoam containers contain BPA, which can leach into hot broth and create health hazards beyond the noodles themselves. Microwaving accelerates that leaching. The stovetop cooking method is always better because you're boiling the noodles in a pot, you have control over cook time, and the noodles actually cook evenly, unlike a cup where the top noodles may be undercooked, while the bottom ones are already getting mushy. If you're going to eat instant ramen, the bag beats the cup every single time, both for taste and for what's actually going in your body. Now, here's the thing we haven't talked about yet, and this is the part that actually changes how you think about all of this. The research on instant ramen and health isn't just about individual ingredients, it's about frequency. Eating ramen occasionally won't harm most people, but consuming it more than twice weekly significantly increases metabolic syndrome risk, especially in women. A study referenced in research from the Mayo Clinic found that eating instant noodles more than twice a week can increase the risk for metabolic syndrome, which means elevated risk for heart problems, stroke, and diabetes. A Korean study of 10,000 adults found that instant noodle eaters had 44% higher odds of hypertension. That's not from eating it once. That's from making it a regular habit. But high sodium is bad for you, isn't the insight. Everyone already knows that. Here's what's actually happening inside your body, and it's more specific and more surprising than a blood pressure number. Your body actually has real systems built to handle a sodium spike. When sodium comes in, the kidneys initially excrete more of it to restore balance. The problem isn't one bowl, it's repetition. With prolonged high salt consumption, that regulatory system can reset itself, resetting your blood pressure to a permanently higher baseline. You're not just spiking your blood pressure temporarily. Eat this enough times, and your body recalibrates its own thermostat to run hotter, permanently. It also does something more direct than raise a number on a cuff. Excessive salt intake causes actual structural changes to your arteries, thickening the walls and building up collagen in a way that stiffens them, independent of blood pressure itself. This isn't abstract. It's your blood vessels physically changing shape. But here's the one almost nobody talks about, and it's the real nobody knows this reveal for this video: sodium and stomach cancer. Roughly half the world's population carries a bacteria called H. pylori in their stomach. Most people never have a problem with it, but high salt intake and H. pylori appear to work together. High salt directly damages the stomach lining, and separately, it can switch on a specific gene in H. pylori that makes the bacteria more aggressive at invading stomach cells. That combination is linked to chronic inflammation, damage to the stomach lining, and it's one of the recognized risk factors behind gastric cancer. So the phrase erodes your stomach lining isn't just a throwaway phrase, it's describing the exact mechanism researchers think helps turn a common, mostly harmless stomach bacteria into something a lot more dangerous. And here's a detail that breaks the salt equals water weight assumption most people have. Research shows your body can actually store sodium in your tissues, like your skin, without the water retention that normally comes with it. That means you could be sitting on a real sodium load without ever looking or feeling bloated. No puffiness, no obvious sign, just the sodium quietly accumulating. Zoom out, and the scale of this is enormous. Excess sodium intake is linked to an estimated 1.89 million deaths every year worldwide. Not from one bowl of ramen, from exactly the kind of repeated everyday pattern we're talking about. The sodium is the main mechanism. High salt concentration in the stomach can erode the mucosal barrier, the lining that protects your stomach from bacteria and other carcinogens. When that barrier is compromised, you're more vulnerable to inflammation and cellular damage. That's the real risk. Not one bowl, not even one bowl a week. It's the cumulative effect of a diet that's consistently high in sodium, preservatives, and refined carbs with almost no fiber or protein to balance it out. So what should you actually eat? The two worth buying are pretty clear once you understand what makes ramen good and what makes it bad. The first is Nongshim Shin Black. When chefs taste this blind, the reaction is almost universally positive. The broth is built on beef bone, which means you're getting collagen and fat extracted from actual bones. That's what gives it that creamy, rich texture that doesn't taste like powder dissolved in water. The flavor is assertive without being one-dimensional. There's heat, there's garlic, there's depth. The noodles hold their shape and have a real chew to them. Born out of South Korea's culinary boom, Nongshim became a household name for bold flavors, and the noodles hold up even after long soaks. The flavor packet delivers a satisfying punch that's anything but artificial. The sodium is still real, This isn't a health food, but the quality of what you're eating is in a completely different tier from Maruchan or Top Ramen. If you're going to eat instant ramen, eat something that actually tastes like it was made with intention. The second is Imi Ramen. This is the one for people who eat ramen more than occasionally and want something that isn't quietly working against them. Imi's spicy beef ramen contains a moderate sodium level, over 20 grams of protein, and 19 grams of fiber. That is 67% of your daily recommended fiber intake. And at 300 calories, it's a reasonable number for a full meal. Air-dried or steam-baked noodles like those used in better quality brands typically contain less than 1 gram of fat per serving, significantly reducing caloric density and avoiding inflammatory oils. Imi uses that kind of process. The noodles aren't fried. There's no TBHQ. The sodium isn't trying to hit your entire daily limit in one shot. It costs more than a pack of Maruchan, obviously, but if ramen is something you eat regularly, this is the version that doesn't require you to feel guilty about it afterward. And if you want a quick hack that works on almost any brand, use only half or even a third of the seasoning packet. You'll immediately cut your sodium intake by 50 to 70%. Then add an egg, some frozen vegetables, a splash of soy sauce or chili oil, and you've got something that tastes better and actually has nutritional value. The noodle is just the base. What you do with it is what matters. So here's where we landed. Momofuku Ando invented instant ramen to solve a hunger crisis. And he did. And it became one of the most consumed foods on the planet. But what he invented in 1958 and what most brands are selling today are not the same thing. The worst offenders, Nissin Cup Noodles, Top Ramen, Maruchan, Mi Goreng, Bulldog Fire Noodles, Trader Joe's Miso, and anything you're microwaving in styrofoam, share the same core problems. Too much sodium, fried noodles loaded with palm oil, TBHQ preservatives, and almost no nutritional value. The two worth eating are Nongshimshin Black for flavor and quality, and Imi for the people who want something they can eat without compromise. The difference between the best and worst options on this list isn't subtle. It's the difference between a product that was engineered to be cheap and shelf-stable and one that was actually designed to be eaten. You know which ones are which now. If you found this useful, drop a comment with the ramen you've been eating. I'm genuinely curious what's in your pantry right now, and if you want to go deeper on what's actually hiding in the foods you eat every day, the video coming up next is going to hit the same nerve. Go watch it.